Yes. And that's where Island Expressions was born. So all we did was take away the beat from the song and focus on word and call it poetry, which is in fact what poetry is. And through that mechanism over the past almost 10 years, we've seen a shift where people are putting power to words like never before. We've seen young persons, old persons, whatever you want to call them, come out and share some powerful messages through poetry. I mean, poetry as an art form has developed so much over the last decade to where poets are now considered performers. I mean, even Jeanne Williams, I remember her telling me one time, the fact that people look at her as a performer, as an artist, she's surprised. And she came out through Island Expression. So, creating that positive outlet. And the concert is more or less an extension to that. We are now, having been involved in, the Team Unity administration from when we were in opposition to now, I must say, it has provided a level of accessibility and a means of me sharing my ideas with the powers that be. And I mean, the matter got all the way up to cabinet where I had to present to them on the idea of, doing something to have the young persons express themselves around a time like this. And the concert was, something that I put forward, a part of what I put forward. And they agreed. The entire cabinet agreed that it is necessary, and they supported it. So we got that concert. And I would think that by all reviews that I've received, that it was an astounding success, and people appreciated the thought behind it, and even the deliverance of the entire product.
Now, I have something here before me that says that music promotes experiences of the extreme for its makers and listeners, turning the perilous emotional edges, vulnerabilities, triumphs, celebrations, and antagonisms of life into hypnotic, reflective tempos that can be experienced privately or shared with others. Now, obviously, music is very, very powerful and has a very, very strong influence on especially young people. Now, today we have a sort of a climate where a lot of the music, as we can see, is becoming more and more, especially the lyrics, is becoming more and more aggressive and more edgy. You hear a lot about guns. You hear a lot about smoking weed. You hear a lot about sex in all its glory, and so on. And you wonder, how much impact is this really having on our young people? And while in a certain sense, young people can have access to this, and any attempt at censorship is going to say, well, you're trying to censor freedom of expression and all of this sort of a thing. But how much of it do you think is really influencing our young people to act out, basically, in terms of what they hear?
Yeah,
what
that
they listen
is
to.
A very interesting angle, because for me, when I look at that, I would refer to a very popular saying, and I would question that saying: does art imitate life, or life imitate art? And at what point is the switch? Because let's take the story of NWA, which is a hip-hop group that came out of LA at the time, when there was police brutality and a number of things that was actually wrong with the system. And that rap group brought awareness to that. Their lyrics were very violent, but it was a reflection of their lives at the time and the situation around them at the time. Now, that was a matter of art imitating life. What I have seen over the years, though, is that situations like those would have been taken and glorified because, oh, NWA became successful doing this. And then the media now turns that around and have life imitate art, which is dangerous. Because for NWA, it was a matter of reporting their current circumstance. Somebody else now is glorifying something that they heard or they perceive to be a way towards success. Now that life imitating the art can be dangerous. So for me, censorship must first take into account what is the current situation. Because if it is art imitating life, then cleaning up the art doesn't change the reality on the ground. So we then have to now look at what is the reality on the ground, and maybe if we clean that up, then the art may be a lot cleaner. But when it becomes life imitating art now, then of course, like I said before, that part becomes dangerous.
Yes.
So I am one that I don't believe strongly in censorship. There are times when it's necessary. But my view is this, that any situation inspires two lines of thought. Because if I see you, Lesroy, arguing with somebody, or let's say I see you hitting somebody, God forbid, I may look at that situation and say, that's something I never want to do. Somebody else might look at it and say, well, you should drive him another one.
Yeah.
Now, is your hitting that person wrong? All right, because you have inspired me to be better and that other person to be maybe worse off.
Yeah. Now, music, of course, is not the only thing that has influence on young people.
Definitely not.
There are other things that have influence on young people, whether positive or negative.
True.
The family,
Yes.
the school, the church, and so on. I remember when I used to work for the Observer newspaper, I went to a press conference. It was a music festival press conference. And you know they have them on the morning every day.
Yeah,
and they have
prior to the show.
Prior to the show.
Yes.
And Busy Signal was at that press conference. And I remember asking him about the type of lyrics and so on in his music, the violent lyrics, the gun lyrics and all of that. And he never really answered me there. He sort of dismissed me. But then on the night of the show, he made a statement in his performance that some journalists are saying that music is influencing people and so on. Music don't make nobody do nothing. That was his statement. And then I had reason to reflect on basically what he says, because sometimes, these popular songs and so on, Vibes Cartel and Alkaline and all of this sort of a thing, it seems to me that it's a two-way thing.
It is.
It's not just what the lyrics bring to the person listening to it, but it's also in terms of what the person listening to it bring to the lyric. Okay? Right. So
yeah.
it's a sort of a two-way thing, because I can listen to something and it doesn't really have an impact on me.
Correct.
Because I bring certain values and but where do those values come from? Other people now, it seems to me that with less and less parenting taking place and values being instilled in young people, they are getting their values from the music and from other things.
Yeah.
Because I listen to something, I can say, well, look, that doesn't really resonate with my values. That is really not me. And I can really bring some level of criticism to it.
But this is it. And I think that is exactly, and to stick a pin right there, that is what we need, more debate in our society. Too many times we sweep things under the rug. And we don't debate. So then we tend to have a one-track view on everything. Life is three-dimensional. Just like you said.
Yes.
You should be able to, and anybody of that sort should be able to listen to something and say, that doesn't fit into my reasoning. And quite frankly, like you're saying, I have been in love with hip-hop since a young teenager. I've been listening to all those music with all those curse words since a young teenager. But you hardly ever hear me swear, if ever at all. So, did it really influence me that way? Not really. I hear more curse words in my community than I hear on the hip hop tracks. But the music gets the blame for it.
Right.
Now, how do we look at our society realistically if we don't pattern things in the right way? We have to clean up, first and foremost, what is immediately around us. The music is powerful, and we could trace it all the way back to our heritage. I mean, even we were told, coming here into the Caribbean region, part of how we communicated in the early days would be through drums and dance and the arts. And that's the vibration that we understand, where people can communicate to miles of distance with a drum beat. You can understand what I'm trying to tell you just by the vibration of a drum.
Yes.
That's how strong an influence music would have on us as a people. Now, at this stage, it is still the same impact. But what we have to do as a society now is to be mindful of everything else around the music, because that inspires the music as well.
Because it seems to me that young people especially, a lot of their role models are now coming from people in the music industry, whether they be singers and so on. I remember once teaching at the college, and it was the time when Vybz Kartel was basically found guilty of murder and so on, and he was sentenced to prison. And I went into the class, and this is a class that, was predominantly girls. It was an ethics class. And I mentioned the fact that, he was found guilty and all of this sort of a thing. And lo and behold, they were very upset.
You can't tell.
They were very upset that he was found guilty. And I went on to say, but look at some of the lyrics that he sings and so on. It's degrading to you as women and so on. But they couldn't care less.
And this is exactly where we are now, Mr. Williams. Our society needs to recognize something that has been mastered by the capitalist society. It is the use of the media. I think that is more damaging than the music itself. And I will share a story that I've shared before. A friend of mine that worked on a major corporation, media corporation in the US, he said to me that he left that corporation for a reason. And the reason was that he thought, and justifiably so, by certain evidence, that the powers that be would have been using that media to destroy our societies. So what they do is make it easier for persons that glorify the negative to get funneled through that media. And because media has such an influence on our society, I mean, we spend all day behind a TV, on the phone, listening to radio. So before you know it, that message is just constantly pumped into our psyche. Now, the thing is, if we look at that formula, that the powers that be were using the media to destroy our societies by pumping negativity through that pipeline, and we take that formula and turn it around and say, look, we are going to build our societies by pumping positivity through this pipeline. Same effect.
No, there's a saying, garbage in, garbage out.
There you go.
And so therefore, if you keep listening to something over and over and over and over again, the question is, does it really become a part of you? There are some people, of course, like Busy Signal, who said music don't make anybody do anything. There are others who say a lot of young people don't really pay attention to the lyrics. They really just pay attention to the beat. And they like the beat and they don't focus on the lyrics. But, that is debatable. However, what we do know is that music has many uses.
Yes.
And one of them is social.
Yes.
And with the social ills that we are having in our society, especially with the number of shootings, armed robberies, indiscipline, and all of that, how can music be used as a powerful social tool to really bring people together in a positive way? I suppose that the concert that was held was, I mean, that is one of the avenues that you can bring people together and you can get a message across to them. A lot of people together, cross section of the society, and in that way music is having a very powerful use as a social tool to have social cohesion. Another thing, of course, is the affective, because the emotions and all of that. Music can affect us, the affective side of the human being, in terms of stirring up emotions. Because, of course, we know music can affect mood, you know, and that sort of a thing. And the psychology of people, you know, their mentality and all of that. What would you suggest, Samal, that we do more of in terms of, you know, music being more of a social tool to bring people together? Positive messages of peace and love and forgiveness and all of that.
Well, that answer would be very easy. Quite frankly, I would even go further than music and say art. And you started hinting on some of the ideas. Do you recognize, and I don't know if we recognize as a society, that life and every experience that we have is a matter of vibration? And I could knock this table a particular song, and each song will make you feel a different mood. Because something in that vibration affects our emotion. Beyond just that and song, then you also have colors. Where some colors could change your mood.
Yes.
So that's why I was stretching beyond music and say art.
Right.
Because there is a very powerful effect that art has on the human psyche. And what I would do is very simple. Empower them. Because if we recognize that these persons or persons within the creative arts has such a leverage in reaching mass population, then use it as a tool. And the more you empower them to do the right, then the less need there is to do the wrong. Because quite frankly, I can't see any entertainer who would tell me that they would turn down money to do the right thing to go and do the wrong thing. So if you're empowering them, creating a living for them to do the right thing, I can't see them turning that down to do wrong.
You have mentioned something very important, and it is that the antisocial lyrical content of a lot of songs and so on, the sex and the lewdness and so on in certain songs, you are saying that that is what sells.
That's what I'm saying currently.
And you're saying that money is driving all of that.
And I am saying that people's need to survive. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to say money is driving it, but at the end of the day, if I have a talent, which I am looking to survive from, and I make a song, and the popular saying now is sex sells, and it does well for me financially, then I tend to drift to that, because that's how I feed my family. Now, if it is that the government and whoever are the powers that be now are supporting me financially to do clean music, then that's what I'll do. Because that's what feeds my family. So at the end of the day, we have to be very mindful that we are competing with two very different worlds out there. And we can't expect to ask the artists to perform for government for free, and then a concert can come around in a club and pay them $500, and when they go in the club, they can't sing the songs that they sing for the government because nobody in the clubs want to hear that, and then expect that they can come and sing the songs that the government wants them to sing on a daily basis. Because what happens there is that, look, when I sing that song for you, I don't make any money at all. When I sing this other song, at least I make $500. So then I will go and sing this song because this does more for me and my family than you, and you wanted me to sing that song. So my thing is, let us put the money behind these people.
No, we have a lot of positive artists and musicians too. And maybe one of the things that we can do is we can promote more of their music.
Exactly.
For example, also, I don't know if this is something can be done in schools, but we have to teach young people how to think critically.
There you go.
How can we use the music to actually teach?
Exactly.
How can we use the lyrics of some of these songs actually to do a breakdown in terms of what are the values, what are the morals, what are the standards, what is the ethics that are being promoted in these lyrics, and use it to teach our young people. Since music has such an impact on them, and since they spend so much of their time actually listening to music and so on.
And this is the thing, I think we study a lot in school about a lot of foreign stuff. I mean, no disrespect to Shakespeare and Europe and what happened in that era. But I think it's time where we as a people tend to look at our own circumstance and analyze it in the classroom. Because if you take a Nature B's White Sheet or you know, an infamous 21 gun salute and analyze what happens behind the creation of that song, you would then realize that these guys were singing based on experiences in their natural environment.
Yes.
And what experiences were those? We had their peers, persons that they hung out with, went to school with, were dying in numbers. Now, then if you start training young persons or the younger ones to start looking at that and say to themselves, this is the damaging effect that this is having on our society, and start looking at ways of transforming that towards the positive, I think we could see a better output coming from schools.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
And I totally agree with you, because my problem is this. My problem is one can say, oh, what I am singing about is reality. What is happening around me. But do you just regurgitate that? Or do you put something in your lyrics, in your music, in your song, that is going to show that, look, this is not how it should be. Let us reverse this. Let us change this. Because sometimes it's just about a regurgitation, basically, of what is happening. And so there's a lot of gun violence happening around, and you come and you sing about the shooting, and you sing about the gun violence and so on. And to a certain extent, it almost seems as though that what is happening in your environment is glorified.
Yeah, it seems that way.
And I don't know how much transformation is taking place with that sort of lyrical content, where it seems as though what is happening is glorified, but yet it's not redeemed. There's no talk about a change, a revolution to change what is basically happening. And that is my problem.
Well, for me, I share sentiments with that concern, but I would go a step further and ask, is it onus entirely on the artists themselves? Because it's art, and art could be analyzed. So what I'm saying is, if the artist doesn't do it, then the teachers get involved, the church get involved, and analyze the music, and share that analysis with the general population, so that there is that critical thought that you mentioned earlier. We need to think outside of just that narrow one-track dimension that we usually think in. So, okay, this artist does a song and he doesn't talk about a solution forward. Let us analyze the song in the classroom, or even the government. Analyze that song and suggest a way forward.
I totally agree with you.
You know, we
So
can't
it has to be a collaborative
exactly.
approach.
Because it was a collaborative approach that built that song. Because if he experienced that, it's something that was done or wasn't done for generations that now manifests itself into a problem.
No, the other day I heard something on the news. Everybody knows Lady Saw. And they know what Lady Saw basically stands for. They know what her music has promoted and so on. And the other day it was in the news that Lady Saw actually got baptized.
Yep.
That she turned her life around, and people were a bit skeptical
Naturally.
and saying they don't believe it. And if she has really turned her life around, her music is still there.
Because that
All
was
the things that she has
put forward.
put forward
Yeah.
is still there.
But that was her art and her life at the time. Do we then judge her based on her past, or do we judge the person and the journey that that person has gone through?
I totally agree with you. But that is not how people see it.
But this is the thing. People see it how we allow them to see it. We need to re-educate our societies to look at life more objectively.
And there's redemption for everybody.
But this is it. We're not even just about redemption. We all grow. We all learn. So if you're telling me that what I did at 13 when I'm experimenting and becoming a man defines me at the age of whatever, let's say even at 45, 50, then that is ridiculous. Because what I know at 13, I wouldn't know at 45. Like, or vice versa. You know, when I grow, I learn things. So what I'm saying is, Lady Saw over the years would have experienced a number of things trying to make it in the industry, and she would have put her art forward. Let's appreciate the art for what it is. She is now at a different place in her life. Let's also appreciate that. You know what I mean? And I think we need to learn to do that as a society and as a people. I think we just look at somebody's situation at one moment and characterize their whole life on that one situation.
And I totally agree with you.
And
But society in itself needs to have a sort of a conversion.
What
in
is
terms
society?
of
We are society.
we are the society.
So-
Society basically is a constructed word. Of
Exactly.
course, there is no society.
Because
We
hide
have
behind
individual
that word.
men
Yes, exactly.
and women, and we have families.
And we hide behind all these shields, oh, society and society. We need to make a difference.
I think Margaret Thatcher said it very, very clearly when she says there is no such thing as society. What we have are individual
Exactly.
men and
It's I and
women
you.
and families.
Yeah.
Society is just a construct.
A mask, if you ask me. Because everything, like you said, oh, but society. Society is you and I. So if we decide to change, then society changes.
That's correct.